This case takes us to the town of Stowmarket in Suffolk in the UK. A well-known couple in the area, Stephen and Anne Searle, had been married for 45 years. They lived in a little cul-de-sac in the brick fields, with their 3 sons and many grandchildren frequently popping in and out as well. 64-year-old Stephen and 62-year-old Jessica, and who went by and had met in Glasgow as teenagers. Stephen was about to join the Royal Marines at the time, where he would remain for the next 30 years. They soon married and had their sons, Gary, Christopher, and Stephen Jr., and the family of 5 did a lot of moving around, relocating to wherever Stephen needed them. Stephen Jr. said he and his brothers had a happy childhood, filled with lots of fun and laughter. The moving was never a problem, as long as they were all together. In the 1990s, Stephen left the military and he and their sons settled into a home in Stowmarket, where they started running a pub and later a bowling alley. It's safe to say the family was always very busy. Their sons soon married and had children of their own, and Stephen and Anne loved the hustle and bustle of their grandchildren being around. Given their very social businesses, Stephen and Anne quickly became popular in the town and were loved by locals and tourists alike. Stephen Jr. described Anne as the glue and backbone of the family who lived for her children and grandchildren, and their father was their idol and best friend. Between the years of 2013 and 2017, Stephen Sr. started working as a councillor for the UK Independence Party, more commonly known as UKIP, for Stowmarket South on Suffolk County Council. People in the town said he was very hands-on and active in his role, and before long, he was quite a high-profile person in the local political scene. As good as everything had seemed from the outside for Stephen and Anne, behind closed doors can often tell a very different story. By 2017, after Stephen was unsuccessful in the local elections, his and Anne's relationship was at an all-time low. There had been murmurs around town for a while about the couple's issues. The reality was, since the early 90s, the pair had been hiding a lot of volatility and problems. A lot of people. Stephen was extremely controlling, often belittling and putting her down, and before long, the verbal fights became physical altercations, and Anne would often be concealing bruises on her arms and legs. When the family moved to Suffolk, the problems only escalated further, and it reached a point where they were fighting every day. Stephen started threatening her life, telling her he could destroy her if he wanted to. On one occasion, inside the pub they owned, and in front of customers, Stephen fired a shotgun above Anne's head when he thought she wasn't showing him respect. He then tried to throw her down the stairs. The police were called several times, but things never went any further. One thing that only poured more fuel on the fire was that Stephen and Anne were both heavy drinkers and had been for years. The more they drank, the worse the arguments would get. Anne had been to rehab before and was aware that she had a problem. By 2017, she admitted that her drinking was out of control. Her mental and physical health was on a rapid decline and she was miserable. Things got even worse when it came to light that Stephen had had an affair that would last for 3 months, and who was having suspicions that Stephen was involved with someone else, eventually guessed the pin to his phone, and discovered many exchanges between Stephen and a contact called SBG, his code for Steve's beautiful girl. She was devastated, but had no clue who it was and begged Stephen to tell her everything. After denying it for weeks, the truth finally came out. It turned out that Stephen had been having an affair with his own son's wife and mother of his grandchild, Anastasia. This was a bombshell for the family. Everyone was horrified. When Anastasia was confronted, she said that Stephen had been chasing her for years, long before she started seeing his son, Gary. At one point, she found out Stephen had a folder on his computer full of photos of her, some where he had photoshopped her into graphic and explicit scenes. He then started sending her photographs of himself from decades ago, when he was a bodybuilder, telling her he was lonely and hadn't had sex in years. Anastasia said after months of his persistence, and being fearful of what he might do if she continued to say no, she and Stephen started a sexual relationship. Stephen Jr. said when it all came out, it was a very dark day for the whole family. The betrayal had so many levels to it. He said his mother was completely broken and mortified. Anastasia said she was in a vulnerable place at the time, maintaining she felt ashamed and guilty, and was sorry that any of it had happened. Gary stopped talking to his father after this, and he and Anastasia said they had started working hard to repair their marriage. Gary said it brought them closer and they remained committed to each other. After news of the affair came out, on top of the endless fights in emotional and physical abuse for so many years, and was in a very dark place, but told people that she was worried she was too old to start again. Having been with Stephen for 45 years, the thought of moving on was too overwhelming for her, and she said that she would push through and make it work no matter what. As Christmas 2017 was approaching, it seemed that and had turned over a new leaf. By December she had given up smoking, was working on controlling her drinking again, and had lost a lot of weight. She told colleagues that she was feeling positive about her future, and was keen to put the past behind her. Despite all of this, sadly, Christmas Day for the family was a less than happy occasion, with the tension already palpable. Everything was turning into a fight. Was disappointed that Stephen hadn't bothered to get her anything nice to unwrap, and was left tearful and embarrassed when Stephen threw the Christmas dinner she had made in the bin. That night, with her moods at an all-time low, and posted a troubling and sad status to Facebook. "Happy Christmas to you all. Hope you are doing well. Have a good day. I hope I will still be here in 2018. We will see," she said. 5 days later, everything would change. 10:20 p.m., December 30th, 2017. Police received a disturbingly calm call from none other than Stephen Searle. As can be heard from the 999 call, police had arrived at the house in less than 2 minutes. As he let them inside, Stephen said, "Sorry, I've been a very naughty boy. Everyone has their breaking point." Paramedics tried to revive and for half an hour, but she was pronounced dead at 10:58 p.m. Several hours later, at 4 a.m., Stephen Jr. was woken up by officers, banging on his door. He was expecting them to tell him that someone in his family had been in a car accident or had suddenly fallen ill and was in hospital. When they told him the awful truth that his mother was gone and his father was responsible, he said the wind was knocked out of him and he went totally numb. Stephen Searle was remanded in custody, and on the 2nd of January he appeared at South East Suffolk Magistrates Court. He spoke only to confirm his personal details and made no indication of a plea. A post-mortem examination revealed that and had died from a sustained compression to the neck. According to experts, Stephen had put and into a chokehold for a long period of time. A forensic pathologist said that and would have lost consciousness after about 15 seconds, and causing her death required further sustained pressure for a period of several minutes. Stephen told the police that he had been acting in self-defense. He said an argument had been sparked after the affair with Anastasia was brought up again, and had attacked him with a steak knife, and he struggled to fight her off. He said he was using one hand to try and disarm her, and the other to restrain her, maintaining he had accidentally killed her in the process, something police said they didn't believe at all. The investigators said Stephen was a self-centered narcissist, caring for little else apart from himself. Detective Chief Superintendent Eamon Bridger said his team listened to the 999 call many times, and everything they thought about Stephen as a person was reflected very clearly in those 2 minutes. He spoke calmly, as if he was ordering some food, with no remorse or sadness, no angst or upset. This was amplified further when it turned out that and had actually died, an hour before the phone call to police was made, and he hadn't bothered to contact anyone during that time. Stephen said, "Eventually she stopped struggling and I said, 'Thank fuck for that, I'm gonna have a cigarette.' She didn't reply. I was expecting her to kick off again. When she didn't, I thought she had gone to bed and that it would be fine in the morning." He was still maintaining it was self-defense and continued with this argument in court, pleading not guilty for murder and hoping for a manslaughter conviction instead. In July 2018, a 7-day trial got underway. The prosecution were confident that they had enough to convince a jury that this was not self-defense. They argued that and would have been unconscious within about 20 seconds, and the way that Stephen had carried on despite the fact she wasn't responding was proof that he was intent on killing her in that moment. They said that he hadn't tried to revive his wife, he hadn't called an ambulance, and he hadn't even called the police until an hour later, by which point it was too late to do anything, and his cold and collected phone call to police painted a picture of someone that was not panicking, upset or shaken up by what had happened. He simply didn't care. After just a few hours of deliberations, the jury rejected Stephen's self-defense argument, and he was found guilty of murder. He was later sentenced to life with a minimum of 14 years to serve. Stephen sat emotionless as the sentence was read out. Stephen Jr. gave a victim's impact statement and said the Searle family will never heal or recover from what had happened. I feel emotionally drained most days. The judge said he took into consideration Stephen's age, fact that premeditation could not be proven, and the fact that he had just been diagnosed with prostate cancer. And he said the minimum term of 14 years to serve reflected all of these factors. The judge said in part, "By your own hands, you have brought grief and distress untold upon your family. You have deprived your children of the mother that they loved. You have deprived your grandchildren of their grandmother, and you have deprived and of the remaining years of her life. I think that it must go without saying that your actions have caused devastating waves of pain and anguish to crash through your entire family. No sentence that I impose can ever undo that suffering." Detective Chief Superintendent Amon Bridger said that their thoughts were with the family and stated, "Domestic abuse continues to take place behind closed doors. Suffolk Constabulary will take positive action against the perpetrators where we have the opportunity. When the victims of abuse come to us, we will work with them to address their needs and make them and their families safe. Our focus is firmly on the needs of victims, and we will continue to work closely with our partners in tackling this type of crime." The aftermath of what happened that December night is still widely felt in the small and close community. Stephen Jr. said he went to bed with both his parents, and in the space of a few hours, they were both gone. The only comfort he takes is that the last time he saw his mother, she was so happy and joyful. The house was filled with laughter, and she was in the highest and most positive of spirits. On August 9th, 1980, Tim Hack and Kelly Drew, both 19, vanished after attending a wedding reception at Concord House in Concord, Wisconsin. In the days that followed, searches discovered various clues scattered throughout the town, including Tim's car with his wallet, a pair of pants, ropes, and a pair of women's underwear. These clues eventually led to a horrifying discovery. 2 months later, the bodies of Tim and Kelly were found brutally violated and abandoned in a field. It took nearly 3 decades, but advancements in DNA technology, along with an unexpected witness and a determined investigator, finally revealed the identity of the perpetrator, a seemingly unassuming man whose dark secrets were unknown even to his neighbors. But who was this man? And why did it take so long to uncover the truth? Today's narrative takes us back to Concord, Wisconsin, a small town in Jefferson County with a population of just over 2,000. Known for its tranquil parks and natural beauty, Concord is a haven for outdoor enthusiasts who enjoy activities like hiking, biking, fishing, and camping. With a violent crime rate of only 7%, significantly lower than the national average of 22.7%, Concord was a place where people felt safe, rarely locking their doors and looking out for one another. It was precisely the kind of community where Tim Hack and Kelly Drew, young high school sweethearts, envisioned a future together, getting married, settling on a farm, raising their children, and growing old side by side. In 1980, Tim and Kelly, both 19, were deeply in love and engaged to be married. Despite living in different towns within Jefferson County, Tim in Hebron and Kelly in Fort Atkinson, their paths crossed while attending Fort Atkinson High School. Kelly, a young woman known for her beauty and kindness, had a deep passion for cosmetology. On the other hand, Tim, a hardworking farm boy, possessed strength and determination. Both individuals were adored by their loved ones for their compassionate nature. As a couple, Tim and Kelly served as role models for other young people. After graduating from high school, Tim pursued a career in farming with his loyal companion, being a tractor affectionately named the Lonesome Loser. Meanwhile, Kelly attended beauty school and recently completed her studies in 1980, aspiring to become a skilled hairstylist and beautician. On August 9, 1980, Tim and Kelly attended a wedding reception at Concord House, Wisconsin. Following the celebration, they had plans to meet friends and enjoy a carnival. However, they failed to appear. The last sighting of them alive was around 11 o'clock p.m. on August 9, 1980, when they departed from the reception. Concerned by their absence and lack of communication, by the morning of August 10, 1980, Tim's father, David Hack, reported them as missing. On the same day, David discovered Tim's brown Oldsmobile parked at Concord House, containing Tim's wallet with $67, his jacket, and his checkbook, all locked inside. The case took a significant turn on August 15th when searchers discovered Kelly's pants and underwear by the roadside, approximately 3 miles away from Concord House. These garments were found to have male bodily fluids on them. Additionally, ropes with military-style knots were found nearby, suggesting the involvement of an individual with military experience. This discovery drastically altered the nature of the investigation. It was no longer a matter of locating a couple who may have chosen to embark on a romantic escapade. Instead, the focus shifted to finding them alive, as they were believed to be in imminent danger. Approximately 2 months later, squirrel hunters from Milwaukee stumbled upon the badly decomposed remains of Kelly Drew in a wood area, approximately 7 miles from Concord House. Around 100 yards away, a fully clothed male body was discovered and later identified as Tim Hack. This marked the official declaration of the case as a homicide, earning it the name Sweatheart Murders. The exact cause of death was not immediately evident as no murder weapon was found at the scene. However, upon further examination, the medical examiner discovered stab wounds on Tim's body and ligature marks on Kelly, indicating that they were both victims of stabbing and strangulation. Kelly had ligature marks on her ankles and wrists, suggesting she had been bound. The presence of ligature marks and insect activity around her throat area indicated that she was most likely strangled. Additionally, bodily fluids found on Kelly's clothes pointed towards a sexual assault. The sweep-up murders captivated the nation due to its sensational nature. 2 young lovers brutally murdered, with the killer or killers still unidentified. The investigation began by interviewing acquaintances of the couple, searching for anyone who may have harbored enough hatred to commit such a heinous act. The police also questioned individuals present at the wedding reception, including the staff at the Concord House where the event took place. Among those interviewed was Edward Wayne Edwards, a handyman employed at the Concord House. Edward, who resided in a nearby campground close to Interstate 94, claimed to have had no contact with the couple and insisted he was not present at the Concord House when they went missing. He stated that he was deer hunting in the nearby woods during that time. However, the police became suspicious when they noticed that Edward had a broken nose. When questioned about it, he attributed the injury to his deer hunting trip. This raised concerns among investigators as deer hunting season in Wisconsin typically occurs in November, not August. Following the police interrogation, Edward relocated his wife and 5 children away from Wisconsin in September 1980. In the midst of the investigation, the investigators relied heavily on eyewitness accounts of a van with a grimy appearance that had been parked alongside Tim's car at the Concord House parking lot. Witnesses reported that the van abruptly departed under suspicious circumstances around the time Tim and Kelly were last seen. Edward happened to own a van that matched the description and was known to possess a .357 revolver. However, lacking a license plate number or substantial evidence linking him to the crime scene, the police were severely limited in their ability to pursue this lead. Consequently, all other leads in the case dried up, resulting in the shelving of the case and its subsequent stagnation. 2 decades after the murders of Tim Hack and Kelly Drew, Richard Lewell, an investigator from the Wisconsin Department of Justice who had been involved in the original investigation, requested the reopening of the case. Lewell had been unable to let go of the case for nearly 30 years, and as retirement loomed, he was determined to exhaust all efforts in solving it. In an interview, he expressed his confidence in pursuing the case due to the significant advancements in DNA technology and scientific methods over the past couple of decades. This newfound confidence propelled him to approach the case with renewed vigor. Lowell had a strong intuition that the police had already interviewed the killer during the initial stages of the investigation and that the person's name would be documented in the files. He simply needed to uncover it. After meticulously sifting through files, witness statements, and interview recordings for 2 months, one name caught Lowell's attention: Edward Wayne Edwards. Not only did Edward possess the means and opportunity to commit the crimes, but the fact that he relocated his entire family out of Wisconsin shortly after being interviewed by the police raised significant suspicions. Encouraged by this discovery, Lowell, along with a team of cold case investigators, resolved to pursue their hunch that Edward was the potential killer. When Edward's neighbors in Concord, Wisconsin were interviewed, it was revealed that he was a challenging person to live with. Described as short-tempered and volatile, he often resorted to violence towards his wife and children. One neighbor even went as far as to call him a monster. Edward's son, John Edwards, characterized him as troubled, mentioning his inability to control his emotions and the presence of underlying rage. In 2009, April Bellagio, Edward's daughter, reached out to authorities with crucial information regarding the cold case murder of Tim Hack and Kelly Drew. She believed that her father, Edward Wayne Edwards, was involved in the crime due to his extensive criminal background. April, who had always been intrigued by her father's mysterious life, felt compelled to share what she knew. Edward Wayne Edwards, born in Akron, Ohio in 1933, faced a tumultuous childhood after losing his parents and being placed in an orphanage. His experiences there, marked by abuse, contributed to his rebellious nature as a teenager. With a history of minor offenses, Edwards' criminal record began at a young age, leading to his enlistment in the U.S. Marines at 18. However, his time in the military was short-lived, resulting in a dishonorable discharge after disappearing shortly after enlistment. Was unwilling to abandon his life of crime, which ultimately led to his recurring imprisonment. By the age of 22 in 1955, he managed to escape from jail in Akron and embarked on a spree of robbing gas stations across various states. Throughout his 20s and 30s, Edward lived as a fugitive, drifting from place to place, and taking up art jobs such as working as a ship docker, vacuum cleaner retailer, and handyman. His autobiography clearly reflects his enjoyment of the notoriety he gained during this period. Edward proudly admitted to never using an alias or disguising his identity while committing crimes as he craved fame. However, his criminal activities caught up with him once again in 1960, resulting in imprisonment for attempting to impersonate a federal officer. Despite being held in the Portland, Oregon jail, Edward managed to escape, prompting the FBI to include him on their 10 most wanted list in 1961. Authorities eventually apprehended him in 1962 and incarcerated him at the United States Penitentiary Leavenworth. However, due to his good behavior, Edward was granted parole in 1967. He credited a compassionate guard at Leavenworth for his personal growth in his memoir. Following his release, Edward married and pursued a career as a motivational speaker. In 1972, at the age of 39, he made appearances on television shows such as To Tell the Truth and What's My Line. That same year, he published his autobiography, The Metamorphosis of a Criminal, the true life story of Ed Edwards. It seemed as though Edwards' fortunes were finally turning in his favor. He had outsmarted the system and was on the path to success. Unfortunately, his streak of good luck was short-lived. In 1977, Edward committed his first murder, targeting 21-year-old Billy Lavaco and his girlfriend, 18-year-old Judith Straub, both residents of Sterling, Ohio. The couple went on a date on August 7, 1977, but never returned. Later that day, Judith's car was discovered in the parking lot of Silver Creek Metro Park, with her shoes and purse left behind. On August 8th, the day following the incident, Norton Police, along with the assistance of family members and a National Guard helicopter, initiated a search for Billy and Judith. The search party eventually discovered their lifeless bodies concealed within the dense vegetation near the Metro Park. It was evident that they had been ruthlessly shot at close range with a 20-gauge shotgun. At that time, investigators were unable to establish a connection between Billy and Judith's case and Edward, allowing him to evade justice for the murders. These killings established a pattern that would persist with the subsequent murders of Tim and Kelly. Meanwhile, by 1982, at the age of 49, Edward found himself incarcerated once again in Pennsylvania, this time for arson. Nevertheless, he took pride in his criminal achievements. In 1993, Edward penned a letter to the FBI requesting his criminal and historical records from various cities across 19 states. Supposedly, these records were intended for a new book he was writing delving into the lives of criminals he had encountered during his time in prison, including individuals like Tony Provenzano, Charles Manson, and Jimmy Hoffa. In 1996, at the age of 63, Edward committed his third murder. This time, his victim was his foster son, 25-year-old Danny Boy Edwards, who had resided with him in Burton, Ohio, for a span of 7 years. Prior to his tragic demise, Danny Boy had served as a soldier in the U.S. Edward somehow managed to persuade him to desert the army and return home. Once Danny Boy arrived, Edward deceitfully lured him into the nearby woods, where he callously ended his life with 2 gunshots to the face. Edward then callously left Danny Boy's body in a shallow grave, which was eventually discovered by a hunter who promptly alerted the authorities. Similar to his initial set of murders, Edward managed to evade justice for the killing of Danny Boy for a couple of years. Individuals close to Edward, such as his son John and daughter April, described him as a deeply troubled individual. His abusive behavior towards his wife and children was extreme, leading his children to flee from home as soon as they could to escape his torment. Investigators strongly believed that Edward perfectly fit the profile of stereotypical serial killer. His extensive criminal history, coupled with his physical violence towards family members and the fact that he wrote a book detailing his crimes, all pointed towards his narcissistic nature. Edward's military background provided him with the knowledge to tie the knots on the ropes that were believed to have been used to strangle Kelly. His history of arson further reinforced the perception of him being extremely controlling. Despite his elderly appearance and reliance on an oxygen tank and wheelchair due to his weight, his neighbors in Louisville, Kentucky, were unaware of the evil mind that lurked within him. However, with new evidence and April's statements, investigators have a stronger basis to suspect Edward's involvement in the murders. Upon visiting his home in Louisville, Edward initially denied any knowledge of Tim Hack and Kelly Drew's murders. But under further questioning, he admitted to being at the Concord house on the night of the murders and seeing the couple. He also confessed that he had not been deer hunting that night, contrary to his earlier claims. Edward agreed to a salivar swab for DNA testing, confident that it would not reveal anything incriminating. However, the DNA test results matched the DNA found on Kelly's pants. In 2009, Edward was living in a trailer park in Louisville, where he was well-liked by his neighbors who were unaware of his dark past. It wasn't until he was brought to Wisconsin and charged with the murders of Tim Hack and Kelly Drew that his true nature was revealed. During the interview, Edward was presented with the DNA test results, further implicating him in the crimes. Investigators requested an explanation from him regarding the presence of his bodily fluids on Kelly's clothes. Edward began to stutter, fabricating a tale about an intimate encounter with Kelly on the evening of August 9, 1980, claiming it was consensual. He fidgeted in his seat, gesturing wildly, sensing the investigator's skepticism. He let out a sigh and muttered something quietly. Upon reviewing the interview recording numerous times, investigators recalled the moment when Edward muttered, "Danette, I killed her." This admission sealed his fate. Edward opted to plead guilty to the murders of Tim Hack and Kelly Drew. In April 2010, Edward Wayne Edwards was found guilty of the 1980 Sweetheart murders and received 2 concurrent life sentences. Despite his request for execution, Wisconsin did not have the death penalty. Retired homicide detective Phil Waters noted that Edward had a history of incarceration and understood the harsh reality of prison life. Unwilling to spend his days behind bars, Edward penned a letter to the Ohio prosecutor's office hoping to persuade them to seek the death penalty by stating, "You're going to want to put a needle in my arm." In 2010, Edward confessed to the killings of Billy Lavaco and Judith Straub in 1977. But due to the absence of the death penalty at the time, he received life sentences for each. However, he still had one final revelation. During a jailhouse interview in 2011, Edward admitted to murdering his foster son, Danny Boy Edwards, for the life insurance money. This time, his scheme succeeded, and he was sentenced to death on March 8, 2011, for Danny Boy Edwards' murder. Despite being convicted of 5 homicides, investigators suspected that Edward may have had between 9 to 15 additional unidentified victims. In the book, The Peyton Allen Files, Phil Stanford suggested that Edward might have been responsible for the murders of Beverly Allen and Larry Peyton in Portman, Oregon in 1960. Detective Chad Garcia from the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, one of the investigators in the Svivart murders, also suggested that Edward might have been responsible for 15 other murders, including the Zodiac killings. Retired homicide detective John Cameron shared the belief that Edward was behind the Zodiac killings and other high-profile unsolved cases, although these claims remain unproven. Edward Edwards passed away on April 7, 2011, at the Corrections Medical Center in Columbus, Ohio, at the age of 77 due to natural causes. His death marked the end of a vicious crime spree that left 5 dead and many grieving. Edward avoided execution by lethal injection, which had been scheduled for August 31, 2011. Despite Edward's arrest for the murders of Tim and Kelly, their family members did not find closure. Norma Walker, Kelly's mother, expressed how Edward's arrest brought back painful memories instead of providing closure. Tim's father, David, felt relief that it was finally over and was grateful for the DNA technology that confirmed Edward as the killer. Edward's daughter, April Balacio, who helped solve the cold case, now dedicates her time to assisting other families of victims with unsolved cases through her podcast, The Clearing. Tim Hack and Kelly Drew had promising futures ahead of them, but their lives were tragically cut short by their killer, Edward Wayne Edwards. Edward, the serial killer, had no personal vendetta against the couple. They were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, adding to the tragedy of their story. Following Edward Wayne Edwards' arrest and the conclusion of the cases, the loved ones of Tim Hack and Kelly Drew, along with the other victims, still struggled to come to terms with the aftermath of the tragedies. Even though Edward's conviction provided some closure, the wounds inflicted by his deeds remained profound. A student came to spend a holiday with her family, went for a run, and vanished from sight. The small village's residents were shocked by this incident because it was unlike anything that had ever occurred there. Detectives launched a lengthy investigation, and it was not until 28 years later that the horrifying truth that stunned the villagers was revealed to everyone. On April 16, 1971, Mandy Stavik was born in Bellingham, Washington, an American city. She was raised in a big family with 2 brothers, a sister, and devoted parents. Mandy's parents made the decision to relocate to Palmer, Alaska, not long after Mandy was born. This area was well known for its safety, peaceful surroundings, and cohesive community of a few thousand people. After a number of years in this town, Mandy's parents decided to get a divorce when she was 3 years old, and she moved in with her mother. She still saw her father practically every day, though. A horrible tragedy befell their family a year later. Mandy's 17-year-old brother vanished while out hunting. His body was discovered by the police later, with nearly 20 bullet wounds. The investigators searched for suspects in vain, failing to identify any. Although this incident was quite shocking for Mandy's family, she went on to have a happy and active childhood. She was an accomplished student, an avid athlete, and a multi-instrumentalist. When Mandy was 12 years old, her mother made the decision to return to Washington, but this time to a small village called Acme, where there were only about 300 residents at the time who were all acquainted. The woman concluded that she and her 3 children would be better off in this place because there were hardly any significant crimes committed there. After enrolling in the neighborhood school, Mandy made friends fast, kept up her athletic career, joined the school band, and started cheerleading. She also cherished the surrounding natural surroundings and delighted in running toward the scenic river. Mandy's family experienced another tragedy when she was 17 years old. Following the divorce, her father continued to reside in Palmer, where he raised a new family with multiple children. Tragically, Mandy's stepbrother perished in a river in 1988. It brought back memories of her older brother's passing and was another setback for her. 3 hours away from home, Mandy attended Central Washington University in 1989 after graduating from high school. She worked hard to earn straight as because she wanted to be a pilot. Despite living in a dorm, She made time to visit her family whenever she could. She returned home at the end of November with the intention of staying for a few more days to celebrate Thanksgiving with her family. The day following the holiday, November 24th, Mandy made the decision to go for a run. Normally, her mother would go with her and ride her bike beside her, but this time her sister had come for a quick visit. So Mandy went off by herself and brought the family's German Shepherd along. Her typical route took her from her house, down the road to the river, and back again, covering a distance of roughly 5 kilometers. The run typically took less than an hour, but Mandy was obviously running late this time. When her brother returned home, he was surprised to find Mandy still absent. While visiting a friend whose house was down the road, the brother watched Mandy run back towards her house. However, a short while later, she ran in the opposite direction. He assumed that she had chosen to complete another lap, but even so, she ought to have arrived home much sooner than he did. As time went on, Mandy's family started to have serious concerns about her. Not only had she never run for so long, but she also had something special planned for the evening. She invited her fellow roommate to come with her before leaving for the holiday. That day, they intended to meet up with friends in a nearby town. Something occurred 2 hours later that increased the family's level of anxiety. It was very strange that their German Shepherd had returned home without Mandy. When a young woman who had already lost a child made the decision to call the police right away, the sheriff agreed to begin the search even though Mandy was only 18 years old. In the meantime, the mother started phoning each and every villager to inquire as to whether they had seen her daughter. Many of them went out into the street and promptly organized their own search after learning that Mandy had vanished. Along with the young woman's family, they strolled the route she had run on multiple occasions, but to no avail. In the meantime, Mandy's acquaintances were being questioned by the police. It was revealed to them that the young lady had been dating Rick since high school. The mother of the young lady also mentioned that the couple had broken up and then reconciled. While searching the area with the villagers, the investigators spoke with him and found no reason to suspect the young man. They also questioned a number of other people. By then, the search had included individuals riding horses, SUVs, and helicopters. The local dog handler even attempted to work with the shepherd dog in the hopes that it would lead them to Mandy. However, the dog was clearly terrified and refused to leave the porch of its home. Despite searching until late at night, no results were found. It persisted the following day, and the authorities were able to track down the first concerning hint. On one of the side roads, volunteers discovered women's sports bands. They had multiple holes, an aged appearance, and were coated in mud. Mandy's mother was shown the pants right away, but she was hesitant to admit that her daughter was the owner. The police nevertheless sent them to the laboratory in spite of this. On them, experts discovered remnants of male semen. Detectives requested DNA samples from every man who knew Mandy and was in the vicinity right away, but they were unable to find any matches. Investigators were unable to use this clue because the FBI's general database, which contains the DNA of convicted criminals, had not yet been established that year. Meanwhile, searchers using search dogs started to take part in the hunt, and they quickly found a fresh lead. They were able to locate the young woman's footprints and her sheepbuck's tracks on the unpaved road. But there was an odd moment when their tracks came to a stop at the same spot. There was only one conclusion that made sense. Mandy had to have entered a car. Experts refute the detective's assumption that she was kidnapped and forced into a car, saying that if the young woman had resisted, the scene at the end of the tracks would have been different. Since it appeared as though she got into the car on her own initiative, it is possible that she knows the driver. Police and firefighters started looking for the young woman in the nearby river that flowed alongside the road where she was last seen on the third day of the search. They discovered something unsettling there. They saw a female body in the water approximately 5 kilometers downstream from the village. After retrieving it, they realized it was Mandy because she was naked except for her socks and sneakers. Other than a few large scratches on her legs, the police did not observe any significant injuries. They started to hypothesize that the young woman might have drowned in relation to this, but this explanation made no sense. First of all, Mandy could not have willingly entered the river, especially since she was naked, because it was the end of November and the water was extremely cold. Additionally, the young woman could have stood there safely because the river's depth was much lower than human height. After examining the victim's body, medical professionals discovered a head injury that was most likely brought on by a powerful blow. They did, however, conclude that this injury was not the cause of death. The experts ultimately came to the conclusion that the young woman drowned in the water due to suffocation. Alternatively put, she drowned. The medical professionals also discovered evidence of the victim's abuse, extracted biological material from the offender, and discovered male DNA under the victim's fingernails. The police came up with the most plausible explanation of what transpired based on all of this. Mandy was abducted on the road, hauled into a car, and driven to a river, where she was violently attacked by an unidentified assailant. The young woman then made her way out, as seen by the scratches on her legs, which were probably from the prickly plants that were growing along the riverbank. Mandy was eventually approached by the criminal, who struck her in the head and threw her into the water. Forensic specialists discovered a DNA profile and cross-referenced it with samples from all parties involved in the case. Over 30 men were checked in total, but no matches were discovered. Aside from Mandy's brother, police questioned every person living in the village and its environs in an effort to find any leads. On the day of her disappearance, a resident of Agm noticed her. The man saw the young woman running along the road from his car. A dark pickup truck passed at that exact moment, just as she was out of sight. Although the man did not think much of it, he did report his observation to the police following Mandy's murder. He was unable to recall the pickup truck's model and declined to give detectives a sample of his DNA. They got a court order to force the man to provide his DNA because they think this behavior is suspicious. It did not, however, match the sample that was discovered on the victim's body. The murder was widely reported in the media, and during the first few months, the police received thousands of tips. Sadly, they were all dead ends, and as a result, the investigation took years to complete. Detectives continued to actively consider a number of candidates, but they were unable to identify any serious suspects. Investigators once conjectured that the crime may have been committed by the Green River Killer, an unidentified serial killer. He was thought to have killed several young women and frequently disposed of their bodies in rivers. Nevertheless, no proof supporting this version was discovered. The murderer was never connected to Mandy's death, even after he was apprehended and his identity revealed. The case was closed after new suspects and insufficient evidence were discovered. For many years, investigators took it out of the archives on occasion in an attempt to come up with some new concepts, but they were unsuccessful. 20 years after Mandy's passing, in 2009, the local police department reopened the investigation thanks to a new detector. He chose to adopt a different strategy because in the last 20 years, no new evidence had surfaced. He and his associates went around the village and its environs, requesting that each male resident submit a sample of their DNA. The detective had a very easy plan. He realized that Mandy's killer was probably a local, and that if they took DNA samples from every man in the area, they would have a good chance of identifying the murderer. This task appeared fairly simple, given that the village and its environs were home to only a few hundred men. However, in reality, it proved to be far more challenging. The police searched every man for full 4 years, but they were unable to find a single match. The detectives started searching through Arcus in an attempt to find every man who was a resident of the area in 1989 after realizing that the murderer might have moved or even passed away in the 20 years that had passed since the murder. The police got an unexpected lead in 2013. 2 women and their kids visited a water park. They were born and raised in the same village as Mandy. They started talking about the notorious murder as they were chatting. One of the women mentioned at one point that she thought she knew who might have killed Mandy. The other person responded that she too had suspicions about a particular individual, and they both gave the same name. He was only a few houses away from the victim and was 21 years old at the time of the murder. The women were taken aback to discover that they had been suspecting the same person all along. But what was even more intriguing were the reasons behind their conviction that Timothy was the culprit. When they were teenagers, one of the women claimed that Timothy had made advances on her. He had once started to aggressively pursue her and make advances while she was in a car with Timothy and a few other friends. After the other friends stepped in, the woman developed a severe fear of being around this person. The account of the second woman was even more startling. One evening, several years after Mandy's murder, Timothy knocked on her door while her husband was at work. At that point, the woman was already living with her husband and their newborn child. His visit did not surprise the woman because he was friends with her husband. The woman let Timothy in after he explained that he had been passing by after hunting and needed to use the phone. But then Timothy began acting strangely. He put the phone down after standing there for a while without making the call. He then started telling her that he had been crushing on her for a long time and made the offer to have sex. Timothy persisted in his aggressive insistence, even though she refused and demanded that he leave. He did not leave their house until the woman threatened to call the police. After exchanging these tales, they made the decision to discuss their concerns about Timothy with the police. The women said they were not positive if he was involved in the murder when asked why they waited for so long. Would never get away with accusing an innocent person of murder in a place like this. Thus, none of them had the courage to share this information. Detectives noticed something intriguing about this person right away, which piqued their interest. It was extremely odd that none of their colleagues spoke with Timothy or requested a DNA sample from him during the initial investigation. Despite knowing the victim, living close by, and having his house next to the road the young woman ran on, the young man did not show up in previous police reports. After more investigation, detectives discovered that Mandy was buddies with Tom, his younger brother. The fact that Muthi relocated to a different city less than 2 months after the murder raises additional red flags. Maybe this is the reason he eluded the authorities. They had a ton of leads at the time and they were checking the people who willingly helped them out. Muthi moved to Emerson, a town 40 kilometers away from his previous residence. He got married soon before moving, and the two eventually had 3 kids. Examining his criminal past, investigators discovered another troubling detail. The police received a statement from his wife in 2010 alleging that Timothy had physically assaulted her and their kids. But one minor detail in the statement caught the investigators off guard. His wife explained why Timothy posed a risk to their family in it. She mentioned her husband's odd behavior in passing while watching documentaries on crime and domestic abuse. Timothy frequently chastised criminals for how poorly they commit murders and leave so much evidence behind when they watched similar programs together. The man also enjoyed boasting that he would never commit the same errors and would have escaped detection. The investigators started to give his involvement in Mandy's murder some serious thought after reviewing all of this data. The most intriguing part started when they went to his house to ask a number of questions and request a voluntary DNA sample. Timothy asserted that he could not recall the crime or even the identity of Mandy Stavik. Detectives began to question his statement right away. First of all, the village's population of less than 300 people was acquainted with one another. Second, it was inconceivable that Timothy did not know the Stavik family given that they lived a short distance apart. Furthermore, this case garnered discussion not only in the village but in all nearby towns following the murder. It was the first crime of that kind to occur in the area in a long time, and for several months afterward, locals' top conversational topic was this one. Detectives were not in a rush to accept the man's, so they asked him to give a DNA sample. Timothy declined, which increased their level of suspicion. Regretfully, investigators are unable to secure a court order compelling the man to provide his DNA, because they have no evidence at all that would connect him to the murder. Following that, they made the decision to take a different route. After learning that Timothy had spent many years working as a courier for a nearby bakery, the detectives went to speak with the manager and requested that she give them details about Timothy's routes going forward. The man may have left his DNA on an object, so the police intend to track him down and retrieve it. The detectives merely stated that an investigation was being conducted and did not disclose to the manager the specific crime for which their employee was being investigated. However, the woman declined to divulge this information in the absence of authorization from upper management. When the police got in touch with them, they requested a court order, which put the investigators back in a dead end. They kept reading Timothy's biography in an effort to uncover fresh information that would help them get the crucial court ruling. But their efforts proved fruitless and the case languished for a number of more years. When the police returned to his home in 2015, they questioned him briefly and asked for a sample of his DNA. But he once again refused. That went on until 2017, when an unforeseen event occurred. A lady named Kim Wagner, a bakery manager, went out to a bar with her spouse and friends. The group of people were all from Aiken and were roughly the same age as Mandy at the time of her murder. They eventually got to discussing the case, which had plagued the community for many years. Kim realized when one of the friends brought up Timothy Bass, who lived close to the victim's house. Kim did not even consider it possible that his whereabouts had anything to do with the murder of Mandy Stavik when the police showed up at her place of employment and asked for information. Nevertheless, she soon began to suspect that her coworker was the murderer. She carried this thought around in her mind for a while. Detectives eventually returned to her place of employment in the hopes that she had changed her mind since their initial chat, and their suspicions were validated. When Kim asked the investigators directly if they thought Timothy killed Mandy, the police were taken aback, but did not refute it. Kim then invited the investigators to her office. The woman then gave them all the information they needed along with some fascinating insights about her colleague. She had known the man for a long time and had always thought he was weird. She made the decision to assist the investigators after learning from a friend that Bass had resided close to Mandy's residence during those years and started to think carefully about this potential involvement in the case. When the detective began tracking Timothy, new challenges surfaced because he consistently wore gloves to work, making it impossible for experts to collect a DNA sample from items he handled. Additionally, the man did not smoke, so the police were unable to even get his saliva on a cigarette butt. Since Bass's only job at the bakery was product delivery, he did not even have an office. Furthermore, an additional peculiar fact made the investigators' job more difficult. Timothy never disposed of his trash at work. He took it home and put it in his van. The detectives knew right away that this kind of behavior could not be accidental. Timothy reportedly realized that the police suspected him of killing Mandy, so he began to take precautions to ensure that they did not find any evidence of his DNA. But in the end, the investigators were fortunate. Kim said she would help when she learned they could not get the suspect's biological material. Because of the way laws are written, police officers are not permitted to ask people to get evidence on their behalf. Even if it is clear that the suspect is guilty in this situation, the evidence will not be allowed in court. However, the investigators have the right to accept and use any evidence that someone voluntarily turns over to them. As a result, Kim offered to collect some DNA samples from Bass while the investigators stood by. The woman took a long time to accomplish her goal because the suspect was very cautious. She did not see the man drinking from a plastic cup and tossing it in the trash with the can until 3 months had passed. She took both pieces of evidence and gave them to the police after waiting for Timothy to leave. They forwarded the can containing the count right away to the lab, where professionals took a DNA profile. It matched Mandy's body's biological makeup exactly. The police went after the man right away and took him into custody after they finally received the eagerly anticipated evidence. The suspect was eventually charged 28 years after the murder. Timothy initially denied his guilt during questioning, but that changed when the investigators revealed the DNA sample match. At this, the man instantly began to tell a different story, claiming that he had an affair with Mandy. They allegedly began dating many months prior to her death and were forced to keep it a secret from everyone since she was in a relationship. Timothy claims that during her job on the day of her passing, Mandy stopped by his house. After sharing a private moment, she departed. He went on to say that although his father was at home at the time, he had long since passed away, making it impossible to use him as a witness. The detectives were momentarily skeptical of this account. To explain why his DNA was found on the victim's body, they believed that Timothy had concocted the entire tale of the covered affair. Additionally, he cited his late father as evidence for his remarks, who was unable to dispute this information. When Mandy's friends and family were questioned by investigators, they all expressed total confidence that the young woman would never date Timothy. He avoided social interactions, was a recluse, and spent most of this time by himself. The detectives made the decision to talk to Timothy's spouse. They were still married even though the woman had made statements against her husband and did not live together. The cops were waiting for another twist in this story. Abruptly, the woman revealed that she and Timothy had spent the entire day at his house on the day of Mandy's murder. Although the detectives did not buy her story, her remarks could cause problems for the court. However, they ran counter to Timothy's account. He claims that Mandy visited his house on the day of the murder and had an intimate relationship with him. When the trial started in May 2019, Timothy's attorney persisted in arguing that his client was innocent and that the victim's body had his DNA because of an intimate, consensual contact. On the other hand, the prosecution maintained that this version was not supported by any evidence. None of the witnesses saw Timothy and Mandy together, and he never gave her a call or sent her any letters. Bass was much more likely to have been obsessed with the young woman and to have had a one-sided crush on her. When Mandy joined the school team, the guy began going to all the sporting events according to what the investigators discovered. He was completely uninterested in sports prior to that. Furthermore, he could observe the young lady while she ran because his windows overlooked the road where she was running. Apparently, he made the decision to speak with her that day and managed to catch up with her. It is possible that the man began to harass Mandy, but she resisted or he convinced her to get into his car. Later, under some false pretense, Bass led her to a desolate location, attacked her, and young lady was able to flee. The man pursued her up to the riverbank, struck her in head with a stick, and threw her body into the water. By the time Timothy's wife gave her testimony in court, she had already filed for divorce, and once more she took the world by surprise. Rather than remaining true to her first account, the woman told a new one. She claimed she could not recall being at Timothy's house the day of the murder. The woman went on to say that Bass forced her to lie to the police during the first interrogation because he could face jail time at the time. She consented to lie to the police because she had a genuine fear that her husband would hurt her or their children. As a result, the suspect lost his one and only alibi, but the court also learned other fascinating information. Timothy's younger brother said that after being asked for a DNA sample, Timothy became extremely nervous. Tom inquired about the situation, and his brother repeated the story of having a covered relationship with the victim. Additionally, Timothy asked Tom to confess to the police that he had a sexual relationship with Mandy, but Tom would not lie. When Timothy's mother visited him in jail, and he gave her a note requesting her to tell the police that they had gone to the store together the day of the murder to buy Christmas gifts, she refused and testified against him. Timothy also asked her to testify against his own father and try to persuade investigators that he was the true murderer. After all of this, the defendant's attorney attempted to persuade the jury that Timothy's DNA sample had been obtained illegally. He maintained that the civilian had been asked by the police to get the man's biological material in violation of the law. Ken Widener, however, denied these allegations and stated that she had given the police her assistance. This murder had shaken her deeply in 1989, and she thought about it often for decades after. When she discovered that her coworker was a suspect, she became determined to crack the case. Kim could not imagine how Mandy's mother felt during those years, especially since she already had a daughter by then. Following a protracted trial spanning several weeks, the jury found Timothy Bass guilty of murder after considering all the evidence. He received a sentence of 27 years in prison, with the option to be released early after 24 years. At the time, Mandy's mother, who was 83, expressed gratitude to the detectives for their work. She was happy that the guilty party had been punished even though she had lost 2 children in her life. Mandy's family created a scholarship in her honor at the high school she attended in 1990. They still support this program today, giving yearly awards to the best music studying students. $25,000 gathered by the people of Acme and neighboring towns served as the foundation for this scholarship. This money was first offered as a reward for information, but it was decided to incorporate it into the program once the case was solved. On September 12, 1988, Lawrence, Massachusetts was rocked to its core by a tragic event. The lifeless body of an 11-year-old girl named Melissa Tremblay was discovered brutally stabbed to death and abandoned on the train tracks near the Boston and Maine Railway Yard. This senseless act of violence left the community in a state of shock, anger, and profound sadness. The question on everyone's mind was, who could commit such a heinous act? The search for justice would span 35 years before the perpetrator was finally apprehended. Nestled along the picturesque banks of the Merrimack River, Lawrence is a vibrant and thriving city that seamlessly blends small-town charm with the excitement of a bustling metropolis. The heartbeat of the city is fueled by its diverse and passionate residents, whose unwavering pride and love for their community can be felt in every corner. As you stroll through the bustling streets of Lawrence, a palpable sense of history and heritage permeates the air, as if the very bricks and stones whisper tales of the past. Lawrence holds a significant place in American labor history, as it was here that the historic Bread and Roses Strike of 1912 unfolded, marking a turning point in the fight for workers' rights and social justice. However, amidst this rich tapestry of history, tragedy struck in 1988. Melissa Tremblay, born in 1977 to her mother, Janet Tremblay in Ceylon, Massachusetts, fell victim to a horrific crime. Raised by her single mother, Janet Melissa, affectionately known as Missy, attended Lancaster School and was adored by her peers. Described as a carefree, fun-loving, and compassionate little girl, she had a wide circle of friends and always brought joy to those around her. Lisa's favorite playground was the Boston and Maine Railway Yard, where she would spend countless hours running and playing amidst the train tracks, while her mother visited friends at a nearby social club. Tragically, it was in this very place that her life was cut short, forever altering the lives of those who loved her. On September 11, 1988, Melissa accompanied her mother and her boyfriend to the La Salle Social Club in Lawrence, not far from the railway. While the adults stayed inside, Melissa went outside to play. The last sightings of her life were reported by a railroad employee and a pizza delivery driver who were in the vicinity during the late afternoon hours of that day. When Janet realized her daughter was missing, she frantically searched the area before reporting her disappearance to the police at around 9 p.m. that night. Janet returned home in a state of panic, desperately hoping for news of her daughter's safety. Tragically, she would never receive such news. On the morning of September 12, 1988, Melissa's lifeless body was discovered in the old Boston and Maine Railway Yard in Lawrence. She had been brutally stabbed to death, and her leg was amputated post-mortem when a train ran over her body. Detectives theorized that the killer had intentionally mutilated the body in an attempt to remove any potential physical evidence. The state police and Lawrence police launched an extensive investigation into Melissa's murder, thoroughly searching the railroad yard and other locations, including the Lancaster Grammar School, where Melissa was a student. The community was shocked and devastated by the heinous crime that had occurred in their small town. Leading the case was Lawrence Police Officer Detective Thomas Murphy, who was appalled by the brutality of the murder. Determined to bring justice for Melissa, Detective Murphy and his team collected physical evidence from the crime scene and the victim's body, although the specific nature of this evidence was never disclosed. However, the forensic team analyzing the body did determine that the stab wounds indicated the killer was left-handed. Since no arrests were made at the time, it is presumed that the evidence collected was not viable for the investigation, leading to its shelving until forensic technology advanced enough to utilize it. The police interviewed numerous witnesses, suspects, and persons of interest, but the only lead they discovered was a suspicious-looking van in the vicinity of Melissa's location on the day of her murder. Unfortunately, further inquiries failed to yield any information about the van or its owner. Despite their exhaustive efforts, the police were unable to apprehend Melissa's killer, leaving the community in fear while her family and friends mourned their devastating loss. As time passed, no new leads emerged and the case remained unsolved, eventually growing cold. However, in 2014, authorities decided to re-examine the cold case, led by Lieutenant Peter Sherver. After reviewing the old case files and the evidence left behind from the initial investigation, the detectives knew they had to take action. Several years later, the evidence recovered from Melissa's body was submitted for testing, and in 2022, after 33 years, the detectives finally had a suspect. On April 26, 2022, Marvin McClendon Jr., a 74-year-old former Massachusetts corrections officer, was arrested in his home in Bremen, Alabama by the Alabama State Police for Melissa's murder. Although the specific details of the evidence used to establish his guilt were not disclosed to the public, the press release did mention that the evidence recovered from the body played a crucial role in identifying him as a suspect. As detectives delved deeper into McClendon's life, a series of incriminating details came to light. McClendon, a former employee of the Massachusetts Department of Corrections, was not working for the state in 1988. He had worked for the department on 3 separate occasions between 1970 and 2002. However, during the time of the murder, he was involved in carpentry work in Chelmsford, a locality near Lawrence. Investigators discovered that McClendon had several connections to Lawrence, the nearby town where the young girl's lifeless body was found near a set of train tracks. Their investigation revealed that McClendon frequented various locations within Lawrence, including the Seventh-day Adventist Church on Salam Street. Additionally, he owned a van that resembled the one witnesses saw Melissa near on the day she disappeared. These findings shed light on McClendon's proximity to the murder location, prompting further inquiry into his potential involvement in the crime. In 1988, McClendon, then 41 years old, had gained a reputation for having an uncontrollable temper and displaying violent and aggressive behavior when under the influence of alcohol. He was known to frequently visit strip clubs, engaging in inappropriate and disrespectful activities towards women. Furthermore, he was involved in sexual relations with women in the back of his van, further tarnishing his image. These facts were previously presented in a court hearing by his brother, Strasnick. Mr. McClendon was represented by a court-appointed attorney, Mr. Fassold, during his trial following his arrest. However, during a hearing, a probation employee testified that Mr. McClendon did not meet the criteria for appointed counsel. During the hearing concerning Henry Fassold's motion to dismiss, McClendon's defense attorney, his own brother Strasnick, presented arguments against the motion. He provided evidence countering Fassold's claim that the DNA evidence collected was insufficient to support a first-degree murder indictment against McClendon. According to court documents, McClendon's lawyer highlighted that his client willingly provided a DNA sample to investigators during his initial interview with Lieutenant Peter Sherver of the Massachusetts State Police, which occurred in Alabama in 2021. Despite using a walker, McClendon managed to make his way into Salem's Superior Court on Tuesday, where he sat beside his attorney, Fassold. In April 2022, during a subsequent interview conducted by authorities, McClendon vehemently denied any involvement in Melissa's tragic demise. He maintained his innocence and even suggested that he may have been the victim of a meticulously orchestrated plot by inmates from the Massachusetts Department of Corrections, where he had previously worked. This statement not only attempted to shift blame, but also aimed to mislead the authorities. Strasnick emphasized that the DNA evidence collected from the crime scene matched the DNA profile of a male relative of McClendon, making it highly unlikely that it belonged to anyone else. Furthermore, he argued that the DNA evidence was just one piece of the puzzle, as there were other factors supporting the indictment against his brother. McClendon's attempts to absolve himself of responsibility did not end there. He proceeded to shift blame onto his own brother, Strasnick, displaying a treacherous betrayal and a willingness to sacrifice anyone to protect himself. His efforts to portray his own relatives as the mastermind behind the crime revealed a great deal about his disloyalty and lack of trustworthiness. He vehemently disputed the notion that his brother was factually innocent, presenting evidence of McClendon's erratic behavior. Leading up to and following the murder, arguing that these actions indicated guilt. Additionally, he highlighted McClendon's history of violence, making him a plausible suspect in the murder case. Fassold's statement suggested that the investigation focused on McClendon rather than his family members due to specific evidence available at the time, such as McClendon's left-handedness, potential connections to Lawrence, ownership of a van in 1988, lifestyle and interactions with law enforcement during the investigation. However, this explanation seems suspicious, potentially serving as an effort to absolve Mr. McClendon of any wrongdoing and could be seen as a calculated and deceptive move. During the court proceedings, Judge Salem Tabat presided over a motion seeking to dismiss the case against the defendant, Mr. McClendon, who had been accused of first-degree murder. The judge attentively listened to the arguments presented in the motion and decided to carefully consider the matter before making a final decision. It is important to highlight that the charge of first-degree murder is an extremely serious offense, carrying the potential penalty of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Consequently, this case is being closely monitored by all parties involved, and the outcome of the upcoming hearing is expected to significantly impact the course of the trial. Despite Fasold's unsuccessful attempts to secure McClendon's release on a $50,000 bond, he remains detained without bond at Middleton Jail. Fasold also emphasized that there were no eyewitnesses to Tremblay's murder and no evidence suggesting that McClendon had any connection or motive to harm her. Nevertheless, McClendon is currently held in protective custody within a cell of Middleton Jail. As part of this confinement, he is only allowed to leave his cell when accompanied by a guard. This precautionary measure has been implemented to ensure McClendon's safety and the safety of others, considering the high-profile nature of the case and the potential risks associated with his involvement. By keeping him in protective custody, authorities can closely monitor his movements and interactions, thereby preventing any potential harm or disturbances within the jail or beyond. According to Sherry Carrickman, a friend of Melissa who attended McClendon's arraignment, she was merely 10 years old when the crime took place. When she saw the defendant in court, she perceived him differently from what she had imagined. Melissa's family spokesperson, Danielle Root, conveyed that McClendon was described as an elderly and fragile individual. Shocking me, Melissa's lifeless body was discovered in a train yard in Lawrence on September 12, 1988, a day after she was reported missing. The family never anticipated that it would take over 3 decades for someone to be apprehended and brought to trial for Melissa's murder. Nevertheless, despite the lengthy delay, the family remains optimistic that the district attorney's office will exhibit the same level of commitment as the detectives who tirelessly pursue the suspect, Marvin McClendon. According to a statement, Root stated that there had been a lot of emotion since the end of April when they were informed of the arrest, ranging from excitement to sadness to frustration and all over the place. They were thrilled to see the suspect in jail, but also very saddened that some of their family members, such as their aunt, grandfather, and others, were not alive to witness him facing justice. The statement went on to express gratitude to the police for their ongoing efforts throughout the years and for the use of DNA technology that was not originally available to work the case. Root finished by saying that their family was looking forward to the case, moving forward to the grand jury for indictment, and then on to the Superior Court to finally see justice served. On December 1, 2014, 47-year-old Abolia Ryan, a mother of 3, had been looking forward to spending the upcoming holiday season with her children. Sadly, someone ended her plans, and she never got to enjoy her favorite time of year with her loved ones. 3 days after her murder, on December 4, 2014, the Abu Dhabi Police Department put an end to their tireless efforts of investigating the merciless homicide when they made an arrest in the city. What came to light after the arrest forced the authorities to be on high alert once again as an unforeseeable motive was uncovered, and it became more and more evident that this case wasn't as simple as it seemed. Who was this woman that Abu Dhabi police had taken into custody? What could she have done that put the investigators in a race against time? The woman who was arrested was 38-year-old Ala Badr Abdullah al-Hashemi. She was a Yemeni-born woman living in the United Arab Emirates with her husband Mohammed al-Habashi al-Hashemi and their 6 children. Ala's eldest child was 10 years old, while her youngest was merely 10 months old when she decided to commit an awful deed. All her kids, young and innocent, were unaware of the wicked schemes that went on inside their mother's head. On Monday, December 1, 2014, Ala set out to bring her plans into action. She put her black gloves on and covered her face with a veiled niqabi, a usually black garment worn by Muslim women to cover their face as part of an interpretation of hijab. Leaving her house just a little before 1 p.m. that same day, headed to the famous boutique mall, which was located on Al Reem Island in Abu Dhabi. Despite knowing that the mall was equipped with fully functioning CCTV cameras and that she was being watched by the security, Ala was completely unbothered. She wouldn't turn back or leave the mall without doing what she had to do. Entered the mall around 1:13 p.m. and took the elevator. Upon exiting the elevator, Ala spoke briefly to a security guard and then headed towards the mall's washroom, where she encountered a 47-year-old woman named Ibolia Ryan. Ala waited for a while, and when Ibolia was alone, Ala struck with full force and stabbed her to death. Moments later, after exiting the washroom, Ala rushed to the lobby once again and hurriedly got into the elevator. It didn't take long for the crowd in the mall to notice what had happened inside the washroom, and as they emerged in the lobby in a state of panic, still processing the gruesome murder that had just taken place, Ala escaped the building. And even though the security at Boutique Mall was usually tight, Ala managed to slip through the hands of the guards. Luckily, all her movements had been captured by the security footage. The mall security informed the Abu Dhabi Police Department of the tragic incident, and as the detectives arrived at the scene, an investigation was launched into the murder. Ibolia Ryan was a Hungarian-American kindergarten teacher who was originally born and brought up in Romania. In 2006, she and her husband Paul Ryan relocated to Sopron, Hungary, along with their daughter Timea and twin sons Adam and Aiden, before subsequently undergoing a divorce. After she had separated from her husband, Ibolia went wherever her work took her. Over the course of the next few years, Ibolia had a diverse teaching career which spanned 4 countries, including the United States and with Abu Dhabi being her last stop. She had been residing in Abu Dhabi for almost a year, and apart from being a teacher there, she also fulfilled the duties of being a devoted mother to her 11-year-old twin sons who lived with her in their Abu Dhabi home. At the time, Ibolia's 13-year-old daughter Timea was living with her father, Paul, Ibolia's ex-husband, in Vienna, Austria. Ibolia had devoted herself to the realm of education in the United Arab Emirates, and even though she was in a strange land away from home, she settled in quite well. Beyond the conventional scope of her teaching responsibilities, she also undertook the role of mentoring fellow teachers, contributing significantly to the professional growth of her peers. It was also evident through her actions that her main focus was to lead her students toward a better future, and she was widely recognized for her resolute dedication to her profession. Ibolia embodied a sense of purity in this world, serving as a beacon of kindness and compassion. She lived with a profound sense of purpose, consistently striving to create a positive impact and contribute to the betterment of the lives she touched. On December 1st, 2014, as the holiday season was approaching, Ibolia had planned to go shopping at the Boutique Mall and then head home to her twins. But little did she know that fate had different plans for her. During the initial stages of the investigation, authorities faced considerable difficulty in ascertaining the identity of the suspect, who remained completely concealed from head to toe. This also led them to consider the possibility that the perpetrator might be a male masquerading in disguise. A couple of days after the tragic murder of Ibolia, specifically on December 3rd, 2014, Abu Dhabi police issued a public statement indicating that efforts were still underway to determine the identity and gender of the suspect. And although there were many people who saw the killer, none of them could provide any distinctive details such as facial features or build about the suspect, because of the fully enveloping attire consisting of a BIA, black gloves, and a face cover. The Abu Dhabi Security Media Department further shared more information by uploading a video on its official YouTube channel. This footage, featuring CCTV recordings, portrayed the killer labeled as the Reem Island Ghost. The video showcased the reactions of the people present at the scene during the heinous act. Notably, a mother accompanied by a young child was observed hastily ushering the child away, while security personnel approached the corridor in response to the unfolding events. The footage showed heightened awareness around onlookers, with particular attention drawn to activities in the restroom area. The surveillance footage, serving as a critical piece of evidence, also captured the cloaked suspect subsequently picking up a newspaper, probably to conceal the weapon, and then proceeding in the direction of the restroom. Approximately 90 minutes later, the individuals suspected of the assault hastily re-emerged into the lobby, prompting disarray among shoppers who swiftly dispersed. In the midst of the chaotic scene, the alleged attacker dismissed the efforts of a woman attempting to interfere with her. As a security guard made his way towards the restrooms, the suspect rushed into the elevator and ultimately fled the scene after the crime occurred. The tape concluded by revealing a distressing visual. A trail of bloody footprints originating from one of the restroom stalls gave a glimpse of the violent and gruesome nature of the crime. Law enforcement officials reported that the unfortunate victim, Ibolia, met a tragic end through fatal stabbing. Detectives also discovered a kitchen knife at the crime scene and confirmed that it was the murder weapon. Questioning the witnesses, the detectives learned that prior to the murder, the two women had also gotten into a heated argument. But it wasn't clear to any of the detectives whether the attack on Ibolia was planned or was it just the result of an overly heated argument. The surveillance footage, as well as the official police reports, provided a detailed account of the suspect. Following the commission of the initial crime, the Nikobe suspect was seen returning to her vehicle and eventually exiting the scene. Shockingly, detectives learned that the suspect had then proceeded to a residential building situated in the Abu Dhabi Corniche, where once again, an unsettling sequence of events unfolded. The security cameras at this location captured the suspect's movement and showed her walking into the building holding a small black suitcase. She proceeded toward the apartment of a 46-year-old Egyptian-American doctor who was only identified as MH. The doctor lived there with his wife and 3 kids. She left the suitcase near their residence and exited the building. Compellingly, the police video revealed more details about the suspect. In the video, detectives were able to see the presence of blood on the suspect's steering wheel and the black suitcase, identical to the one she allegedly carried to the doctor's apartment. This chilling visual evidence added another layer of complexity to the unfolding narrative, highlighting the gravity of the suspect's actions as she went from one crime scene to the next. Fortunately, the doctor's son spotted the suitcase in the evening while going to the mosque to pray. He saw something strange in front of the house and told his family. They called a security guard for help and he contacted the police. The police were able to confirm that it was a bomb and defuse it just in time before it could explode. The security guard mentioned that a woman with gloves had come to the house just minutes before the incident. She was dragging a black suitcase. He added that she went to the floor where the doctor's family lived and a few minutes later quickly left the building. According to detectives, the homemade bomb was made using basic materials which were easily available in the market. The bomb was made up of a small gas cylinder, a lighter, glue and nails meant to cause severe injuries when the bomb went off. While the detectives kept the investigation going to identify the killer, they kept their progress and measures under wraps, not sharing many details about the case. On the morning of Thursday, December 4, 2014, Abu Dhabi police caught the person responsible for the crime. The killer was identified as 38-year-old Ala Badir Abdullah al-Hashemi. General Sheikh Sef bin Zayed Al Nahyan, who is Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Interior in the UAE, shared that the security and police forces had arrested the suspected woman known as Nikobe for brutally killing the American teacher Iblia Ryan. He highlighted that they identified the suspect in less than 24 hours and arrested her in less than 48 hours. However, the detectives refused to disclose how they successfully identified Ala. Going through Ala's internet search history, it was evident that Ala had become extreme in her beliefs because of the things she saw on the internet and the people she followed. She didn't have a specific plan to hurt a particular American person, but she wanted to hurt someone from another country at random. Ala was quite blunt when she stated the reason behind the attacks and didn't try to hide any details. Ala admitted that she chose Ibolia and the doctor simply because they were American. Furthermore, Ala told the detectives in charge of the case that she committed those horrible acts because her husband, Mohammed al-Habashi al-Hashemi, was taken by the police for questioning on the suspicion that he might be connected to terrorist groups. She wanted to get back at the police force for taking her husband and make foreigners, especially Americans, British and French people living in the country, scared for their safety. These terrible incidents happened after there were other attacks on people from Western countries in Saudi Arabia. Many people around the world heard about these attacks and it made the international security and business communities worried. Additionally, just a few weeks from Abala's stabbing, there had been warnings from U.S. embassies in the area because some websites were encouraging attacks specifically on American teachers. Abu Dhabi was mostly considered a safe place for people from other countries to work, and the security there was very strict when it came to terrorism. However, in light of these events, People from other countries living in Abu Dhabi began to grow fearful regarding the increasing crime rate against international citizens. The government in the Emirates said that Abala's killing was a terrorist attack done by one person who had been influenced by online terrorist beliefs. The police clarified that Allah didn't know either of her victims. She carried out those attacks only because of the nationality of the victims and not because of any personal problems. This made the people who live in Abu Dhabi, both citizens and those from other countries, feel uneasy because terrorist attacks almost never happen in the United Arab Emirates. Detectives uncovered another threatening detail about Abola's murder when they came across a statement made in September 2014 by Abu Muhammad al-Adhani, who spoke for the group calling itself the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. In the statement, Abu Muhammad al-Adhani urged the Muslim community to harm Westerners and people from any other country involved in the attacks on their group. His exact words were, "Hurt them in any way you can." The attacks that followed this threatening statement were seen as part of a pattern of violent acts inspired by ideas instead of a direct order from militant groups. Other examples included the 2014 ramming attack in St. John's, sur Richelieu, the beheading of a French tourist named Hervé Gordel in Algeria, and other attacks on people from Denmark and the United States and Saudi Arabia. Events of terrorism were not taken lightly by the officials in Abu Dhabi. A good chunk of the city's functioning relied on the work of many people from other countries and on tourism to keep its economy going. To make sure that the violence remained isolated, security authorities sent out a strong message to any other potential terrorists in the UAE, warning them of the dangerous outcomes of any attacks they might be planning. A security official in the UAE, who wasn't named, shared with an Emirates news agency called WAM that just before the attack, Allah had been surfing through terrorist websites on the internet, and it was through these websites that she learned how to make explosives and carry out a murder. The detectives were also keen on exploring the possibility that Allah was not working alone. The police talked to ABC News and said they arrested some other people at Allah's house, but they weren't certain whether these people were involved in the attack or not. Allah told the investigators that her husband, Mohammed al-Habashi al-Hashemi, used to support militant groups. He made her watch and listen to recordings of leaders from groups like Osama bin Laden. Her house was said to be like a base of operations, but it wasn't clear if she was part of any groups. Upon further investigation, it was discovered that Allah was also found guilty of using an online account to share information that mocked and harmed the country. As the news channels covered the report of Allah's arrest, it was revealed that she was also convicted of sending money to Al-Qaeda, a terrorist organization in Yemen, knowing that it would be used to support terrorist activities. On June 29, 2015, before announcing the verdict, Judge Fala al-Hajari said that the UAE, with Allah's blessings, had been and always will continue to be a safe and stable place. It's an example of people living together in peace and harmony. He mentioned that in recent years, some new criminal methods not seen before in the UAE have been used to scare and hurt people. The goal was to disrupt the country's system and put society in danger by doing harmful things. When there was a threat to the overall stability of the nation, it was important to review and deal with these actions in the strictest way possible. That's why the new anti-terror law was achieved to fight against terrorism and get rid of it. The judge ordered the law enforcement to confiscate all the evidence in Allah's case and to shut down the online account Allah had been using to communicate with terrorist organizations. Later, on June 29, 2015, the Federal Supreme Court in Abu Dhabi sentenced 38-year-old Emirati woman Ala Badir al-Hashemi to death for committing the murder of 47-year-old Ibn Yulia Ryan. Since the ruling was made by the Supreme Court, it could not be appealed. Hence, Allah's fate had been decided. During her trial, Allah requested the court to provide her with psychological help. She said that she had been having strange visions and saw ghost-like people. The court took this into consideration and called for psychiatric tests to be done on Allah. However, the results showed that Allah was well aware of what she did, and her mental state didn't seem to affect her actions when she carried them out. When the court declared the verdict and sentenced Allah surrounded by 4 police officers didn't show any emotion. After leaving the court, she smiled and waved at her father and brother. On July 13, 2015, a Monday morning, Ahmed al-Dahani, Attorney General for the State Security Prosecution, announced that the ruling of the State Security Circuit of the Federal Supreme Court No. 73 of 2015 on the execution of Allah Badr Abdullah had been carried out following the approval of President Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan. However, the officials didn't disclose how Allah was executed. Members of the expatriate community in Dubai held a candlelight vigil in memory of Ibn al-Ras and shared how her tragic death had impacted them. The process of closure for Abolia's family, friends, and the teaching community was difficult. Paul Ryan, Abolia's former husband with whom she had 3 children, shared his views on the verdict as well. A recruitment firm that helped bring Paul Ryan to Abu Dhabi started a fundraising campaign so he could take her body back home and support their children's education. After a few weeks, the Ryan family took over the fund and utilized it to help Ryan's family in Romania. General Sheikh Sef talked about Abuya's murder as something that went against the important values the UAE believed in. These values came from the teachings of Islam and the true Arab heritage. He mentioned that the UAE strongly supported these good values, whether it was within the country or in other places. He also shared how sad he felt to see such crimes happening in a country known for its safety and security. Later in 2015, Allah's husband, Mohammed al-Habashi al-Hashemi, faced serious charges for supposedly planning to bomb tourist places and harm a local leader in December of that same year. The name of the leader Mohammed had planned to assassinate wasn't revealed. During a court hearing at the Federal Supreme Court, Mohammed persisted that he was innocent and said he didn't do any of the things he was accused of. Mohammed was being represented by 2 lawyers. One was chosen by the government and the other was chosen by his family. Both lawyers dodged reporters when asked to make a comment on Mohammed's situation. Mohammed was accused of 7 things, including planning to bomb the Yas Marina Formula 1 racetrack and a nearby IKEA in the capital. He also supposedly planned to attack tourists and an American military base. Police also found evidence linking Mohammed to terrorist organizations Al-Qaeda and ISIS. His case was adjourned until January 18, 2016, but since it didn't receive enough media coverage, the public couldn't find out how the court proceedings went and what the verdict was. On September 24, 2021, tragedy struck when 3-year-old Areli Doe fell victim to a terrifying exorcism conducted by her own family. The distressing cries and screams of the young child echoed within the walls of Eid Lesia Apostles I Prophetis, a small Pentecostal church in San Jose, California. Unfortunately, Areli took her last breath during this harrowing exorcism attempt, orchestrated by her mother, Claudia Hernandez Santos, Uncle Reen Aaron Hernandez Santos, and grandfather Reen Trigueros Hernandez. As prosecutors delve into this heart-wrenching case, they uncover the horrifying details of a fatal church exorcism that has deeply shaken the community. Now, with all 3 family members facing accusations, the legal proceedings aim to bring justice for little Areli, who tragically lost her life at the hands of the very family that should have protected her. The investigators' diligent efforts over several months have unraveled the roles played by each family member, mother, uncle, and grandfather, all equally contributing to the tragedy that befell this innocent child. The question remains, did Areli Doe receive the justice she deserved? Let us delve further into the matter. San Jose, California holds a special place with its museums, gardens, and historic architecture, standing proudly at the heart of the state. As of the 2023 population census, this vibrant city is home to 930,862 individuals from diverse backgrounds and walks of life. Over the past 5 years, the crime rate has experienced a significant increase. Despite being recognized as one of the safest major cities in America, the crime rate per 100,000 people slightly surpasses the average rate of 316.3. However, the incident involving Areli Doe was an isolated occurrence driven by religious beliefs. It is a tragic reminder that a young life was cut short prematurely. Nestled within the serene streets of San Jose, the seemingly ordinary Iglesia Apostles Prophetis, a small Pentecostal church, became the focal point of a chilling crime that unfolded in September 2021. Within the confines of this unassuming church, a horrifying exorcism took place, forever leaving its walls tainted with the haunting echoes of Areli Doe's tragic demise. The Hernandez family consisted of Claudia Alicia Hernandez, a 25-year-old mother, and her 3-year-old daughter, Arely Doe, who tragically became the victim of a horrifying exorcism. Alongside Claudia, Arely's uncle, Rene Hernandez Santos, and her grandfather, Rene Hernandez Sr., were also involved in this disturbing incident. Not much is known about the uncle and father of the victim. The family's spiritual journey took place within the confines of Iglesia Apostles y Profetas, a small Pentecostal church where Arely's grandfather, a certified pastor and the leader of the church, played a significant role. The family's occupations outside of their religious roles remain undisclosed. Claudia, the mother, managed a YouTube channel where she shared live videos. However, one thing that was certain was their deep religious devotion. It was this religious affiliation that led them to believe that the child was possessed, ultimately resulting in her tragic demise. On September 24, 2021, a dark chapter unfolded in the life of this 3-year-old child as her family's misguided attempt to rid her of what they believed to be an evil spirit led to a day of unimaginable horror. The events that unfolded on this fateful day would later become the focus of legal proceedings and public scrutiny. It all began when Arely woke up during the night and started screaming intermittently. Claudia Alicia Hernandez Santos, Arely's mother, believed that her child's tantrum was the result of malevolent forces and took her to the church to perform an exorcism. In her attempt to exorcise the supposed evil spirit, Claudia repeatedly inserted her finger into Arely's throat. Despite the immense pain she endured, Arely fell asleep multiple times due to exhaustion. Her uncle and grandfather held her down, gripping her neck, which ultimately led to asphyxiation. According to Claudia, Arely's vomit had a purple color. The tragic 2-hour-long ceremony concluded with the family delaying medical assistance for nearly 2 hours after the passing of their loved one. Claudia contacted the police just after 8 p.m. to report her daughter's lifeless condition. Upon arrival at the Iglesia Apostles y Profetas Church in San Jose, the authorities found young Arely unconscious on the floor, setting off a series of distressing events. Arely suffered severe physical abuse, lost consciousness, and exhibited signs of trauma, with injuries on her eyes, face, neck, and chest. The family's belief in demonic possession led to a prolonged ordeal lasting around 12 hours. Paramedics arrived 2 hours later to find her lifeless body, marking the end of a day filled with torment. The affidavit filed in Santa Clara County Superior Court revealed that Claudia believed her daughter had passed away between 6 o'clock and 6:30 p.m. The family's distorted spiritual beliefs and misguided attempts to expel evil through abusive practices cast a dark shadow over Arely's final moments. The investigation into Arely's tragic death unfolded as a chilling narrative of religious fervor gone wrong, culminating in a horrific exorcism carried out by her own family members, her mother, uncle, and grandfather. The subsequent legal proceedings revealed shocking details of the 12-hour ordeal that led to Arely's demise within the walls of the small Pentecostal church, Iglesia Apostles y Profetas in San Jose, California. The investigative process took a significant turn when Santa Clara County District Attorney, Jeffrey Rosen, filed court documents to consolidate the cases of all 3 family members into a single trial. The reason for this request was based on the argument that each defendant had a reprehensible role in the violence inflicted upon Arely, which made it difficult to determine individual responsibility for specific injuries. The court records provided a disturbing timeline of events that occurred on September 24, 2021. Claudia Hernandez Santos, Arely's 25-year-old mother, initiated the tragic series of events by contacting the police to report her daughter's lifeless condition. When authorities arrived at the Pentecostal church, they found Arely unconscious on the floor, later confirming it as a homicide caused by suffocation and smothering. The investigation uncovered horrifying details of the family's collective actions during the 12-hour exorcism attempt. Prosecutors argued that all 3 defendants, including Arely's mother, uncle, and grandfather, actively participated in physically abusing the young girl. At different points during the ordeal, each family member held Arely of various parts of her body, with one gripping her neck, another her abdomen, and the third holding her legs. The alleged attempt to induce vomiting involved a disturbing collaboration of efforts. The preliminary autopsy confirmed that Arely's death was a result of homicide, specifically asphyxia. due to suffocation. As investigators delved into the distressing circumstances surrounding the little girl's demise, alarming details emerged. According to court documents, the family, driven by the belief that Areli was possessed by a demon, engaged in a twisted form of prayer and exorcism at the church. Areli's mother, in an effort to rid her daughter of the perceived evil spirit, resorted to distressing methods such as attempting to induce vomiting by inserting her fingers down Areli's throat and squeezing her neck. These actions escalated throughout the day. The investigation revealed a disturbing lack of care for Areli's basic needs leading up to her death. The victim's last meal was on Thursday, September 23rd, at approximately 9:00 p.m., according to the affidavit. Shockingly, she was only given about 6 ounces of water from Thursday until the time of her death. The coroner's report revealed the extent of eerily suffering with injuries to her face, neck, chest, and back caused by blunt force. The presence of internal bleeding handed another layer of brutality to the acts committed by her own family members. As the investigation progressed, the family members were charged with child abuse, including assault on a child resulting in death. These legal proceedings shed light on the distorted beliefs that motivated the family's actions, rooted in the misguided belief that Errol was possessed by a demon and that a religious ritual could expel this perceived evil. The court documents examine the individual statements made by each defendant during police interviews. Errol's grandfather, who claimed to be the pastor of Iglesia Apostles I Prophetis, provided inconsistent accounts of the events leading to the young girl's death. His changing narratives raised suspicions about the accuracy of his statements and suggested potential inconsistencies or attempts to hide the truth. Similarly, Erli's uncle, Reen Aaron Hernandez Santos, significantly changed his initial account during subsequent interviews with the police, indicating a lack of transparency and prompting further investigation into the circumstances surrounding the exorcism. If convicted, Claudia Alicia Hernandez could face an exceptionally severe sentence of 25 years to life in prison. The investigation took place amidst a troubling trend of increased demand for exorcisms driven by factors such as poverty, anxiety, and a lack of trust in conventional institutions. The tragic case of Erito serves as a stark reminder of the inherent dangers that arise when religious fervor and unchecked beliefs intersect. As the legal proceedings unfolded, the need for a consolidated trial highlighted the complexity of assigning individual responsibility in a crime committed collaboratively. The family statements and actions, as uncovered during the investigation, offer a chilling glimpse into their perspective on the events surrounding the young girl's untimely demise. The family's narrative begins with Erli's mother, Claudia Hernandez Santos, expressing her belief that her daughter was possessed by an evil spirit. According to the statements provided to the police, Erli would often wake up at night crying or screaming, which solidified the family's conviction that she was under the influence of a demonic force. In response to these deceived manifestations, Claudia attempted what she described as an exorcism to rid Errol of the alleged evil spirit. Claudia's involvement in the exorcism took a disturbing turn as she matter-of-factly detailed the methods she employed. First responders who arrived at the scene noticed bruising around the child's eyes, neck, and chest. Claudia admitted that they waited for 2 hours before finally calling 911. Subsequent interviews with investigators shed light on Claudia's evolving beliefs regarding Errol's possession. Claudia and her uncle reportedly prayed for Errol while inside a bedroom. The situation escalated the following morning when Claudia and her uncle drove Errol to the Iglesia Apostles I Prophetis, a small Pentecostal church. The family still held the belief that Errol was under demonic control. They believed she had passed away between 6 o'clock and 6:30 p.m., approximately 12 hours after arriving at the church. According to Erli's father, they felt compelled to perform a ceremony to free her from the clutches of evil spirits. The specifics of the exorcism were not disclosed. However, it was mentioned that Erli was asleep upon arrival at the church. The individual also emphasized, if you refer to the Bible, you will see that Jesus expelled demons and restored the health of the sick. As reported by the newspaper, is not my decision to act. It is when God, in His will, chooses to heal the individual. The preacher is merely an instrument of God. Our actions are guided by God's will. Following Erli's passing, Claudia initiated a GoFundMe campaign to gather funds for burial costs. The family's strong religious beliefs were evident in Claudia's Instagram bio, which featured a reference to Isaiah 55 to 811, a Bible verse about finding strength in challenging times. Arely's mother contributed to the investigation through YouTube videos she shared, offering her perspective on her daughter's death. In these videos, Claudia did not accept responsibility for the alleged exorcism or her daughter's demise. Instead, she attributed Arely's passing to a divine intervention, stating that God had taken her and expressing relief that her daughter would not have to face the difficulties of the world. In an unexpected development, a YouTube video emerged in January, for months after Arely's death, featuring Claudia Hernandez discussing her daughter's passing. The 40-minute video, titled with Arely's full name, provides a chilling glimpse into Hernandez's demeanor as she addresses the circumstances surrounding the tragedy. Hernandez's statements in the video aim to offer her perspective on the situation, highlighting that only those present truly comprehend what unfolded. She acknowledges the negative perceptions surrounding her and her daughter's death that stresses her inability to alter the past. Hernandez expresses gratitude that her daughter is no longer enduring the challenges of an increasingly difficult and deteriorating world. In fact, the video serves as a poignant exploration of Hernandez, delving into the anguish of losing a child, while also showcasing moments of apparent attachment. She reflects on the joy of motherhood, acknowledging the sadness, tears, and longing she feels for her daughter. The video's portrayal of a complex emotional landscape adds another layer of intricacy to an already deeply tragic narrative. Just 6 days after the YouTube video was uploaded, prosecutors formally charged Hernandez. The gravity of these charges, combined with the perceived disparity between Hernandez's demeanor in the video and the alleged actions leading to Arely's death, highlights the complexity of the case. The family's association with Iglesia Apostles, I Prophetis, took a darker turn when the church was linked to another incident, an alleged kidnapping involving individuals associated with the church. Professor Alison Cave, an expert in the history of magic, science, and religion, provided valuable insights into the broader context of exorcisms. She emphasized the growing prevalence of exorcisms in both the United States and Latin America over the past 5 to 7 years. Cavey pointed out challenges arising from the Catholic Church's lack of preparedness in training priests to perform exorcisms, resulting in a demand that surpasses the number of qualified individuals available. She also identified societal factors such as poverty, anxiety, and the lack of trust in traditional educational institutions as driving forces behind the demand for exorcisms. Cavey stressed that when people opt for supernatural explanations like demonic possession, it often stems from dissatisfaction with natural explanations, providing solace without the burden of blame or responsibility. In the case of Aries' family, the tragic events unfolded amidst their desperate attempt to solve a problem they may not have fully comprehended, attributing it to supernatural forces. It is disconcerting how the family displayed no sense of guilt or sorrow even after the loss of Arely. Claudia's arrest was preceded by a YouTube video that provided a glimpse into her emotional journey, from the joy of pregnancy to the profound sorrow of losing her daughter. Her sentiments reflected the challenges of accepting the loss of a child to illness, leading some to seek solace in supernatural explanations. The legal proceedings that followed revealed that Claudia Alicia Hernandez Santos was charged with felony assault on a child, resulting in death due to great bodily injury. Her arrest on January 31, 2022 shed light on the gravity of the crimes committed during the tragic exorcism. This horrific incident not only claimed the life of a young child, but also exposed the dangerous consequences of misguided beliefs and heinous actions. The case of Arely reached its conclusion when Claudia Alicia Hernandez, a mother, was charged with felony assault on a child, emphasizing the extreme nature of the alleged actions against her own daughter. The decision to deny bail was made to ensure public safety, considering the perceived risk of flight. Factors such as Hernandez's limited ties to the community and her birthplace in El Salvador were cited as reasons for this precautionary measure. This underscores the seriousness of the accusations against Hernandez and the potential dangers she may pose if released before trial. The disturbing details of the case were revealed through recently uncovered court documents, as the San Jose Police Department and the District Attorney's Office had initially withheld information about the tragic homicide. The investigation aimed to uncover the circumstances surrounding Ural's death, ultimately leading to Hernandez as the sole individual arrested in connection to the case. The intertwining of faith and crime in these unsettling cases raises significant concerns. It is deeply troubling to witness how religious beliefs can be manipulated and exploited to justify heinous acts. These cases highlight the importance of maintaining a balance between religious freedom and ensuring the safety and well-being of individuals. It is crucial for authorities to thoroughly investigate and hold accountable those who commit crimes under the guise of faith, while also respecting the rights of individuals to practice their religion peacefully. Hotel cleaning personnel at the Windsor Motel in Arizona found 45-year-old Canadian Barbara Callow dead on April 5, 2005. Barbara had come to Lake Havasu City from Canada specifically to witness the blooming desert wildflowers. Barbara was last seen alive at approximately 8:40 p.m. When the hotel staff saw her, it was the night before. Investigative efforts were launched to find the real reason behind Barbara Callow's death. Nearly 20 years later, these efforts paid off when the culprit was identified, thanks to developments in DNA technology. Two important questions remain as we delve deeper into this mystery. Since Barbara Callow was only a visitor from another country who could have been the murderer, what possible reason might have existed for this horrible act? Do follow along to learn more about this tragic tale. This case takes place near the California-Arizona border in Lake Havasu City, which is located on the lake's eastern shore. Almost 1 million people visit this well-liked location each year. In addition to offering a perfect climate, a variety of dining options and lodging, it is well known for its historic London Bridge, crystal clear lake, friendly community, plenty of sunshine, and numerous annual events. Generally speaking, the city has a lower crime rate than the state of Arizona. The killing of Barbara, however, shocked the neighborhood on April 5, 2005. It was an eerie incident that was unusual for the otherwise tranquil area. Barbara Irene Callow was born in 1960, the parents Bridget Callow and Werner Callow in Toronto, Canada. Additionally, she had a younger brother named Peter, to whom she had a close bond. Her early years were spent in Toronto. Barbara demonstrated exceptional intelligence and a distinct career goal from a very young age. She continued her studies at the Veterinary College of the University of Guelph, where she graduated with a master's degree. Barbara's passion for knowledge was evident when she decided to pursue a career as a researcher after completing her studies. Her talents were acknowledged by the Canadian federal government in 1992 when they hired her to work as a meat inspector. She eventually advanced to a position in the science branch where she gave insightful advice on issues pertaining to animal health after making the switch to veterinary biologics over the years. Her co-workers respected her for being a bright, daring, and self-starting person. Barbara was a multifaceted individual who enjoyed gardening, cycling, arts, and bird watching when she was nigh at work. She was also deeply passionate about traveling. Barbara's bright future, however, was tragically cut short on March 25, 2005, when she left Ottawa for a vacation. Barbara, then 45, had decided to take a solo vacation in 2005. Seeing the enchanting bloom of desert wildflowers in the heart of Arizona was the main purpose of her plan. On March 25th, she departed from her Ottawa residence and set out on her quest. Her initial destination was British Columbia, and she proceeded to Las Vegas, Nevada from there. On March 26th, she rented a car and set out on her journey. After that, Barbara took a car to Yuma, Arizona, and spent a day exploring the area. She then took a car to Lake Havasu City, Arizona, her ultimate destination, eager to carry on exploring. She arrived at the Windsor Inn Motel on April 2nd, intending to use her room as a cozy base for day trips into the breathtaking Arizona scenery. Barbara's journey was an adventure full of hope and the promise of new experiences, not just a quest to see wildflowers. However, this promising adventure would soon take an unexpected turn. The motel staff last saw Barbara on April 4, 2005, at approximately 8:40 p.m. She called her mother, Bridget, in Toronto later that evening to let her know she would be staying an extra day in Lake Havasu before traveling to Las Vegas to catch her flight home. But when morning came, Barbara was nowhere to be seen at breakfast. Her absence worried the housekeepers, so they went to see how she was doing. They were shocked to find her dead body in the motel room. Without delay, they made a police call. Following the 911 call, police showed up quickly and went into Barbara's room. As soon as possible, the police searched the room and took the body for an autopsy. At the scene of the crime, investigators gathered potential suspect DNA evidence and preserved it for potential use in the future investigation. Her death was later determined by an autopsy to be asphyxiation, caused by being smothered by a pillow. The fact that her room was empty of her wallet, credit card, phone, identification, and the very pillow that was thought to have been used in her murder was another unsettling detail. Also, the fact that the rental car she had driven was also stolen and was eventually discovered abandoned 2 days later, along Interstate 15 in the Mojave Desert of California, added to the mystery. According to Lake Havasu Police, Lieutenant Joe Archie, Barbara might have confronted someone trying to break into her rental car. Though it is more likely that she was in the wrong place at the wrong time, it is still possible that she knew the person. The car appeared to be the main attraction in what appears to be a crime of opportunity. But for some reason, something happened that turned this into something ugly. When her brother learned of Barbara's terrible demise, he immediately took a plane from Toronto to Lake Havasu City to retrieve her remains. In spite of their extreme shock and distress over the unexpected and perplexing circumstances surrounding Barbara's death, the local community's investigators were motivated to see justice served. The fact that violent incidents were uncommon in Lake Havasu City was also mentioned by Charlie Canson, the city's at the time. Despite early efforts, the case was ultimately abandoned due to a dearth of convincing evidence and slow progress in DNA technology. In 2018, a ray of hope appeared for Barbara's family after years of uncertainty and increasing suffering. The Criminal Investigations Unit and Cold Case Squad of the Lake Havasu Police Department made the decision to reopen the case. They went over the evidence again, including the DNA that was taken at the scene of the crime in 2005. It was a major breakthrough when they finally identified a suspect. Barbara's tragic death was suspected to have been caused by 60-year-old Stacy Childs. This was a significant step toward bringing Barbara Kahlo and her bereaved family justice. Born in Santa Cruz, California in 1962, Stacy Childs has an alarming record of legal run-ins. Although not much is known about his parents or early years, his criminal history says a lot. He had previously been found guilty in California of a number of charges before there was any reason for suspicion. His list of crimes included a 2012 felony conviction for receiving stolen property, a 2005 felony conviction for eluding a peace officer, a 2004 felony conviction for false imprisonment, and a 2018 misdemeanor for threatening to injure someone. He received sentences of more than 2.5 years in San Quentin State Prison for the last 2 counts. Childs was immediately taken into custody on April 26, 2022, following his identification as the murder suspect in Barbara's demise. Childs' trial got underway pretty quickly. He was originally accused of second-degree murder after his arrest. During the trial, Amanda Clairhout, the deputy county attorney, disclosed that there was a missing pillow and foam cord from room 139 of the motel where Barbara had lodged. She also mentioned that a medical examiner report noted significant evidence, including the laceration to Kahlo's cheek, bruising around her neck, and literature marks on her feet. A re-examination of DNA evidence taken from Childs in 2008 and under the victim's fingernails in 2005 marked a turning point in the case. The choice to prosecute Childs for the crime was made in 2022 after this analysis. Paul Amon, Childs' defense lawyer, countered that his client had voluntarily provided a DNA sample and had assisted with the police investigation. Childs, according to Amon, angrily denied having anything to do with Barbara's murder, even though the jury deliberated for more than 4 hours over the course of 2 days during the trial. They eventually told Judge Derek Carlisle that they were unable to reach a unanimous decision. Judge Carlisle then ruled that the trial was a mistrial and released the jury to continue their deliberations. Amanda Clairhout, the deputy county attorney, declares she intended to retry Childs after the mistrial. But the judge stepped in and ordered a quibble verdict, which allowed Childs to be released from the adult detention facility. Ultimately, Stacey Childs was freed from detention. Though his future remained uncertain, he continued to deny any involvement in Barbara's murder. For her family, the loss of the free spirit Barbara remains a great burden. Her neighbors and friends were still missing the compassionate person she was when she was not around. Even after Childs was found not guilty, there are unanswered questions regarding who might have killed her and how the DNA evidence connected to Childs. This case is shrouded in uncertainty, so the Kahlo family is left searching for answers. Those who knew Barbara recall her as independent, adventurous, and full of life. They also recall her as having a strong desire to travel and take in the beauty of the world. Her mother can still clearly recall the day of the trip. She said, she claimed to have taken a trip to see the blooming cacti and white flowers. California was supposed to have an incredible year for bloom because of the rain. Her neighbor recalled her saying, she just wanted to go for a rest and just be quiet. She had no one with her, but she was a very friendly person. While the family was unable to have backed their loved one, they believed that the police apprehending the perpetrator was a step toward healing. Despite his acquittal, the family continues to seek answers and mourns the untimely death of their beloved daughter. Barbara Kahlo's case is tragic and complicated. The outcome of the case is marked by uncertainty because it is still unresolved. And the truth about Barbara Kahlo's death remains elusive. However, such cases highlight the complexities and challenges of solving cold cases, as well as the importance of advances in forensic technology. It also emphasizes the importance of justice and closure for victims' families and the community. Let us now hear your thoughts on this case. What potential obstacles do you believe the prosecution and defense faced during Stacey Childs' trial, and how might these have influenced the outcome? Do you believe there is hope for a resolution in cold cases like Barbara Kahlo's in the future, given advancements in forensic technology and DNA analysis? Or are there constraints that could prevent justice from being served? Thank you for joining us on this journey into the depths of unsolved mysteries. Cold cases not only challenge our understanding of the past, but also ignite our curiosity and determination for answers. Remember to subscribe to stay updated on our latest investigations. And if you have any information regarding the cases we've covered, don't hesitate to reach out. Together, we can shed light on the shadows of the past and bring closure to those who seek it. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and never stop seeking the truth.